We're here today to talk about ASP.NET MVC view engines, and let's start right away with a quick story. So this is me, Ch9, and since I was a child, about 12 or 13 years old, I started writing web applications. And when I started, it was mainly about HTML. And the most exciting thing I could do was insert some GIF animation to the page, and wow, that was just great. And then I grew up a bit and started working professionally. And when I started, it was mainly about classic ASP and Cold Fusion. And then times passed by, I grew up a bit, and ASP.NET came around. So it was ASP.NET 1 and 1.1 and 2 and 3.5 and 4 was the last one. And then I realized that in the last 10 years or so, nothing hasn't really changed. Everything we did with ASP or ASP.NET, PHP, Cold Fusion, all that stuff, was we just made static HTML a bit more dynamic by creating them on the server. But in the meanwhile, the development, the process of development has developed enormously. We had design patterns and best practices and clean code and software craftsmanship and so on. And in the web part, we kind of were stuck with creating HTML. That's it. That's why I like when I saw that Rails came around, and then ASP.NET MVC came around, which kind of clones what Rails brought to the table. And the great thing about Rails and ASP.NET MVC is that they bring us the next level of web development. It's kind of an evolution. You can see that as an evolution of the web development frameworks. And what they did to web development is that they brought the MVC model. And the great thing about this model is that now we do not create dynamic HTML pages, but we create applications that happen to be presented on a browser with HTML. So the MVC view engine, the second thing about it is that we can take each of these circles and change it to what we want and not to what we're forced to work with. And this is great. This is awesome because this gives you freedom, the freedom of choice. This is something that we didn't have, and freedom of choice, for one, it's great. For the other side, it's not so good because we might have a lot of options, which is not the case here, so we're fine. But the great thing about the freedom of choice is that you pick the thing that you like the most, that you want to work with, and this just makes you happy. And this is what it's all about. If you're happy, you'll write better code, you'll enjoy your work more. You might even come home happy or get up in the morning happy and go to your workplace and smile. This is the great thing about ASP.NET MVC, which gives you these options. And today we're going to talk about the options you've got regarding view engines, which render the HTML at the end. We're going to talk about 4 of the most popular view engines, which are Web Forms view engines, Enamel, Spark, and Razor. There are more, but they're less popular, so we won't talk about them, but there are more. So let me introduce myself first. I'm Ch9. I am a co-founder and a web technologies expert in a company named Code Value. I am a Microsoft MVP and the author of Iron Ruby Unleashed and ASP.NET 4 Programmer's Reference. If you want to contact me, please do not hesitate. My blog is ironshay.com. You can contact me by my email, shay@ironshay.com, or my Twitter account, surprise, surprise, ironshay. Okay, so without further ado, let's start. This is kind of an interactive session. What I mean by that is I'm going to introduce you some questions during the session, and you are going to answer them using polls of the live meetings. And the first one is, which view engine have you used in production? Now, I'm gonna switch to the poll now, and you just pick the one that you use. Let's see if it works. Should see. I'll give you a few seconds to do that. You just choose the one that you used in production, the most of your projects. Yeah, so yeah, I can see that most of you have used web forms. Let's show you the poll results too. And it's not a surprise, and I'll talk about it later. But what I want to show you now is that what I want to do with the poll results. I'll switch back to my desktop. I have this scoreboard. We're gonna give points to each of the view engines during the show, during the session. So first, ASPX view engine, which is the web forms view engine, is the clear winner of this popularity test. But this is the baseline, and we'll see from now on if web forms keeps the lead. Okay, so let's continue. We'll start with a few facts and see what these view engines are all about. Okay, so the first one is by far the most popular one, which is the web forms view engine, also known as ASPX. It's actually been around since 1996, which is 15 years ago. It was developed by Microsoft, and it's been around since the first release of ASP, of classic ASP. Actually, it hasn't changed much since then, but again, it's the most popular one, and I think it's the most popular one in ASP.NET MVC because it was the default one. A reason for that is that everyone, all web developers in the Microsoft land has used web forms, and because of that they know ASPX, right? So it was the easiest transition from ASP.NET to ASP.NET MVC was to use as the web forms view engine. So this is the reason for its mass popularity, but I can see it changing from MVC3 and on, and we'll talk about it later. Now, the motto of the web forms view engine is expressiveness and explicitness, which means that you write a lot of characters just to write code inside your view, which gives you the advantage of spotting the code inside your view very, very easily. This is the main thing about it, I guess, for me at least. And okay, so this is ASPX. Let's move to the next one, which is NAML. NAML is here since 2007. It actually came from a view engine named AML, which is a view engine for Ruby on Rails. It was created by Andrew Peters, Steve Wagner, and Simon Kropp. It's an open source project, which means that you can contribute to the code, you can download the code. What I didn't say about the web forms view engine is that it's also an open source project, but it's a Microsoft way of open sourcing stuff, which means that you can download the code, but you cannot contribute back, or you cannot redistribute your changes. But you can see the code, so it's kind of cool. Now, the idea behind AML is that HTML is bad. Now, because HTML is bad, what Amel did was creating a different language for HTML that replaces HTML. So you don't need to play around with the funky HTML stuff. You just use Amel, which does all the transition behind the scenes. We will see that how it looks like. Another thing about Amel is that it's also can be referred as the Python of the view engines because it has the indentation thing going on. You must indent your code. We will see what it means, but it kind of grows on you and becomes really clear. And the ones that really use Amel, they can't think they will ever change that. Okay, the next one is Spark. Spark has been around since 2008. It was created by Louis Desjardins. I hope I pronounce his name right. And it's also an open source project. Spark is a really nice view engine, and it's kind of the opposite of Amel, which means that Spark says that we're writing HTML, right? The view should be HTML at the end. So what Spark does is just integrates all the code inside the HTML, or makes it look like it's HTML, which is kind of interesting. One thing about Spark is that it's a very active open source project, and it supports MVC free since last week. About Amel, by the way, and Amel, it hasn't been so active recently. It supports MVC2, not free. But again, you can contribute to the code. So if you want to help, so go ahead and do it. The last view engine we're going to talk about is Razor. It's been around officially since last month. And again, it was created by Microsoft, the ASP.NET MVC team. Now, this is not the official logo of Razor, it's just what I created with MS Paint. And it's because Razor doesn't have a logo, as well as ASP.NET MVC. So Microsoft, if you see it, please create a logo so we can use it in presentations and love it and worship it. Yes. If you want to see this as the logo, so let me know. Yes. Anyway, Razor is also the Microsoft way of open sourcing stuff, so you can download the code, see how it's written, but you cannot contribute back or redistribute it. Now, the idea behind Razor is to be as compact as it can and to be fluid, and we will see what it means, but it's a really cool way of writing view engines, and actually I think it's the most innovative stuff that came out of Microsoft recently. So it's really cool. Okay, now we're moving to the main part, which is the code. We'll start with the basics and we'll move forward to the more advanced stuff. So we start with the very, very basic, which is a hello world code. Now this is the output of what we're gonna see. All of these view engines, the code we were gonna see will output the same view at the end. And to do that, this is the action I have on my controller. I use the view bag dynamic variable, and I put inside, you see the hello world property, which is just a string, and a hello world HTML that has HTML inside. And now we will see how we do HTML encoded and not HTML encoded output on the views. So the first one is the ASPX view engine. The left part is the HTML encoded part, and the right part is the non-HTML encoded. Actually, the left part, which includes the colon inside, was introduced only in ASP.NET 4. As I said, the web forms view engine has come from ASP and it hasn't changed much. So I guess this is the most dramatic change that it saw in years. So this is how you do it in ASPX. Now in AML, it looks a bit different. Pay attention that I use the view data collection because again, NAML doesn't support MVC3 yet, so it doesn't have the viewback property. So this is how it does. You do it in NAML. In Spark, looks a bit different with the $sign and the curly brackets. And in Razor, which is the land of the @ sign, everything starts with an @ sign. You just do it as you can see. Now, the interesting part about Razor is that, as you can see, you do not have something to a different character to tell Razor to not HTML encode your string. You just use a helper, which is an interesting concept. This is the very basic stuff, and it's all more of the same. But you can see that each of these view engine do each of these stuff a bit different. Okay, we move on to conditions. How we do conditions in the various view engines, and the output of what we're going to see is just an HTML saying it's mvcconf day. Okay, so the first one is the web forms view engine, and I guess you all know this by now. As you can see, what I told you about ASPX is that you can spot the code immediately. So it's very easy to see where the code starts, where it ends, and this is the power of the web forms view engine. Now in NAML it will look very different. You see that we start with a dash, then write our code. Now the second line, which starts with a % and then the P, says that everything that comes after this %P will be inserted inside a P element. Okay, now the idea about the second line here is that we intend it by two spaces, which you can configure to use spaces, to use tabs, whatever you like. But as you can see, you do not have curly brackets here. You do not start or close your if statement because everything here goes by indentation. So this is the idea of NAML. Now in Spark, which is the opposite of NAML, in my opinion, the if statement is inside the P element, which is an HTML element. In AML, you do not use HTML at all. In Spark, you use HTML only. Now, another thing about Spark here is that you can do almost everything in various ways. At least to do that, the condition, you can do it in 2 or 3 ways, maybe more. So if you do not like that, because it's kind of funky this way, because it starts with a P, then you close the P element, and then you have an else element, and inside it you have P. It's kind of funky, but you do have more alternatives to do that in Spark. So if you do not like that, you can do it otherwise. The last one is Razor, and again you start it with the @ sign and then you write your code. Now the fluidness of Razor comes to life here. Look at where the curly brackets start and where they end. If you look here at where the else part is, you can see that you do not need to insert an @ sign at the beginning of this else line because Razor knows that it's part of the code. Now, this is, you can like it, but you can also not like it, because if you have a lot of HTML there, it makes it kind of hard to see where the if statement ends. So some will see it as an advantage, some will see it as a disadvantage. Okay, so we saw this, how we write HTML encoded and not HTML encoded stuff, and we saw the conditions, and this is the first time you need to say which one you like the most. So I'll give you the second poll and just pick the one that you like the most here. I'll give you a few seconds to do that. Okay, it seems like Razor is leading by far. Okay, so Razor kind of wins this one. So Razor gets 1 point. Okay, interesting. Okay, we continue. Loops. How we're doing loops in these view engines. This is the output that we're gonna see at the end. Just a list of the various view engines. This is how we do it in ASPX. You can also see here how you can declare a variable inside the view engine. So in ASPX, you just start the less than symbol and a % sign, and just write your code, and then just write the for each, and I guess you all know it by now. Now in NAML, again, entirely different, no HTML. You start with a dash, the line that you want to write code in. So this is how you do it. You declare the variable. Then you start the unordered list with the % sign. The for each, again intended with double spaces, and underneath the for each, the li with an equal sign with the string. And then what will happen, it just puts the li element, and inside it puts the value of the variable named item. Spark, again, everything is HTML, so you also declare variables inside HTML-like elements. So the var element will make you declare variables. Now, after you declare it, inside the li element, you add an attribute named each to loop, and add li elements with the item inside them. And last but not least, Razor, which here you can see that in order to insert code to the view engine, you just start the @ sign and then you use curly brackets. And again, as we saw, the for each after the @ sign, pretty simple. Okay, now we move to layouts or master pages. You can also name this like that. This is the output. The title comes from the layout, and the inside text comes from the page. Now let's see how we do it in the various view engines. The first one is ASPX, and it's actually very similar to how you do it in ASP.NET. On the master page, which is the one on the top, you insert a content placeholder element, which is where the content will be inserted to. Now, on the page itself, you need to tell it which one is the master page, and then you need to write your content inside a content element, which says which content placeholder it belongs to. This is how you do it. There is no such more playing around with that. This is the way you do layouts in ASPX. In NAML, again, looks entirely different. By the way, again, everything outputs the same. So I go back to ASPX. This is what you write in ASPX, and this is what you write in enamel. It's the same output. Okay. Now, the left part is the layout, and the right part is the page. All you need to do to tell AML where the content of the page will be inserted to is to put an underscore. And where the underscore is, the page content will be inserted to. Now, a few problems with enamel. The first one is that you can have only a single placeholder. You cannot have more and then kind of fill them from the page. You can have only one at the moment. However, you can use partial views in order to add other placeholders, but you cannot do it in a single page. So this is the problem. The second problem is that you cannot state the master page of the page inside the page. Okay, if you look on the right side, you see that I only have the content there. I do not declare which master page to use. This is because enamel goes the Rails way and use conventions, and you can only use layouts with conventions and follow these conventions, and you cannot break them. So this is the way you do it in enamel. In Spark, it's pretty straightforward. On the left, it's the layout, and you write use content view inside it, and on the right you can see the page which says use master and the name of the master. This is one way of doing that. You can use other use content elements in your layout in order to add more placeholders, and then you can just fill them inside the page. The content name, the placeholder named view, is the default one, so you do not need to tell it to fill the content placeholder named view because it's the default one. On the page, you can tell it explicitly which master page to use, but you can also state the master page in a global settings or use conventions. Okay, it gives you all the options you want. And Razor. The way you do it in Razor is again pretty straightforward. On the master page, which is on the left, you write render body, and this is where the default content will be inserted to. On the right, you see the page where you can explicitly say use the layout and give it the name. Now, again, in Razor you can use several placeholders. They're called sections in Razor, and you can also put the layout definition in global setting, or but you do not have to explicitly say it on each page like the web forms engine. Okay, so now we saw loops and we saw layouts. So now again, cast your vote and tell us which one was better. I'll give you the next poll. Yeah, Razor is your favorite, I can see. Okay. Okay, great. Let's go back here, and Razor won once again and takes the lead. Interesting, right? Okay. Now we're moving to a bit more advanced stuff. We saw all the basics, and let's dig a bit more. And now it's the first time we're gonna see a real page, which is just displaying a form. What the output of everything will be this one. This is actually the default logon page that you get when you create a new project, a new ASP.NET project, which is not the empty one, but the second one. So you get a logon page, and this is it. So I just converted it to the various view engines. This is how you do it in WebForms view engine, and it's I actually didn't do anything, just created a new ASP.NET MVC project and just copied it from there. It's again pretty straightforward. You use HTML helpers to create all the input elements. That's it. Again, you can see that the expressiveness of ASPX, with it you can spot right away where the code is. Okay, you do not have to think about it. Now in NAML, this is how it looks like. Again, we use HTML helpers to create the input elements. However, as you can see, if you feel that you're watching CSS, then you're probably right. It got some of the ideas from CSS. Again, if you do not like CSS, you probably won't like AML, but it actually makes sense, and it grows on you, as I said. And by the way, AML is pretty popular in the Rails world, so I guess that it can be also popular here. You just need to get used to it. However, you write less code like that, and the great thing about the indentation part of AML is that if you want to move parts, so you do not need to find where the closing element is and stuff. You just pick the tree that you want to move and move it. Very fast and easy. Okay, this is how we do it in AML. And now in Spark, and here it's very interesting because look here, for example, the label part, or here the text box or validation message. These are they do not come by default, but there is a sample for that in the Spark when you download Spark. Now these you can work with these. It's something called bindings. Now bindings is a way to provide new HTML-like elements that do stuff for you. Now you declare them in a file named bindings.xml, and then you can use it throughout your application. So here I have a few definitions for label, text box, validation message, and the rest. And I can use that instead of just calling the HTML.label for or textbox for and all the HTML helpers. I just move that to the bindings part, and now I can use the new HTML elements that are named label or text box or validation message, which is really powerful, really nice. And again, you stay within the HTML concept. It's pretty nice. Again, in Spark you can do it otherwise too. You can call the HTML helpers, you can do it in various different ways. You just choose the one you like. Okay, and last but not least is Razor, which again, pretty straightforward, uses HTML helpers, nothing really special here. Again, just use the @ sign where you want to run dynamic code, and it will be executed. Okay, the next sample is how you do not repeat yourself using these view engines. The idea with dry in ASP.NET MVC, usually people will say use HTML helpers, right? But I don't really like HTML helpers that create HTML, because then you need to write HTML within strings in your C# code, and it's not that fun anymore. So everything I'm going to show you now can be done through HTML helpers, but I try to do it in a different way. So the output for this sample is just a page saying hello. Now at the bottom here you see the HTML behind it, and this is what I wanted to do, something that will create this HTML part that gets two parameters, which is the text and the font size. This is it, and this is what we're going to see now. Now in ASPX, or the Web Forms View Engine, there isn't a special way of doing that, so I just use partial view. And a partial view in ASP.NET MVC with the Web Forms View Engine is just it's the same idea like the user control in ASP.NET Web Forms. It even got the same name. So on the top sample here, you can see that the say hello ASCX page, which is the user control or the partial view, and the partial view has its own model, which is of type dynamic here. And what I do, I just insert the model.font size and model.text here, and in the page, in order to call it, I just use the render partial HTML helper and send it an anonymous type, which this is the kind of the very basic way of doing that in ASP.NET MVC, and it can be done with almost all the view engines. Now in Enamel, it's not the best way maybe to do it, but this is how I came up with what I came up with. Again, I use partial views because there is no other way of doing it here. So partial view in Enamel starts, its name starts with an underscore. So you see that say hello starts with an underscore, and the partial view itself is pretty straightforward, nothing really special here. I use a parameter named font size and the parameter named text. Now, in order to make this happen, I had to declare these parameters on the page, which is not the best way of doing that, but again, so in the page I had to create these two parameters, give them values, and then I call the partial view. And calling a partial view is similar to calling the layout before that we saw. It starts with an underscore, a space, and then the name of the partial view. So the third line here just calls the say hello partial view. Okay, so this is the way with Enamel. In Spark, it becomes more interesting because Spark has something that is called macro, Spark macro. And if you look here, we just declare it in the page, or you can do it in a global scope, and we give it a name, which is say hello. We give it two parameters and their types, and then we just say what the output of the macro will be, which is the div element and so on. Now to call it inside the page, I just call it like it was a function or a method inside the page, which is actually what it is eventually. But this is one page. You can put macros inside a page, inside global scope, wherever you want, and you just use it. Now, this is the way to do it in Spark. In Razor, it also gets interesting because Razor has what called inline helpers or inline templates. Look here, I declare a helper inside the page, give it a name, give it parameters, and then just write the output I want it to produce. And then inside the page, I again call it like it was a method. Pretty similar to Spark models, right? Very similar idea, actually the same idea. And again, you can put the helpers inside a global scope or on the page itself, wherever you find it more suitable. Okay, so this is Razor, and we've seen two things again, which is the form and the dry stuff. Now, again, this is the last vote you have today, so make it. Okay, it seems like Razor again is winning, but Spark has got to you. Some of you like Spark. Okay, so let's. These are the results. So Razor wins once again. Let's go back here. So, okay, Razor won by far. You really like Razor, which is interesting. I thought you'd like some other stuff too, but I guess Razor got to you. Okay, so we saw all the basics. We saw some of the more advanced stuff, and I started by saying that ASP.NET MVC view engines were ruled by the WebForms view engine, which is by far the most popular one. And as we can see from your votes, and also from what I can see in all the new projects that's starting now, is that Razor is going to conquer this war. It also the default view engine for ASP.NET MVC 3 and I guess 4 and so on. So it will become more and more popular. However, Spark is also a great one, a great view engine to look after. The great thing about Spark is that you really have a lot of options to do stuff. You don't like one option, you go and use the other one, which is pretty nice. It's probably the most versatile view engine out there. Now, NML, the problem with it is that it hasn't been active so in the recent months, but it also has its charm. And if you like it, then it's hard to go back to HTML afterwards. So if you like it, I hope you contribute to the code, because it's a great view engine. And again, if you look at the Rails project and the Rails community, Haml is pretty popular. And last but not least, the WebForms view engine. I don't really know what to say about it. It's old, maybe it's too old. It was nice to have a very expressive and explicit view engine maybe 10 years ago, and we move forward. It won't disappear soon, so do not hesitate to start a new project using ASPX. But remember that you've got more options, maybe better options. I don't know. Maybe if you like ASPX, then it's the better option. And all in all, the ASP.NET MVC infrastructure gives you this freedom of options, this way of choosing whatever you want to choose. And it does not force you to use only a single view engine or a single model or whatever. And this is great because now you have these options, and whether you like all of them or whether you like one of them or not, you go ahead and choose the one that you like and work with it. And if it's an open source project, then contribute to it and make it better. And so this was my presentation. I hope you like it. And by the way, someone asked me what was my favorite here. I'm kind of in the middle between Spark and Razor. Again, Razor is kind of conquering the world of view engines right now, but I think they're both I like them more than the others, let's say it like that. Okay, so this is the resources that you need to start. These are the sites. I'm going to post the slides and the code I used here and some more resources to my blog, so check it out in a few hours and a few days. This is where you go and start, and there is documentation for all of these view engines. Just go ahead and start using them. So thank you.